My sister got a beach house, and you get this junk. My husband threw Katie out, calling her a loser. She got into her grandma's old car to leave for good, but when she opened the trunk, she was stunned. Inside was something that changed her whole life. You know that moment when your entire world crumbles in a single afternoon? I'm Katie, and 3 years ago I lived through exactly that. Picture this, standing in my own driveway while my husband Brad screams at me like I'm some stranger who wandered onto his property. Your sister Jessica gets $1 million beach house in Malibu, and what do we get? A rusty old Buick and boxes of worthless junk. His face was purple with rage, spit flying as he gestured wildly at Grandma Rosa's 1987 sedan sitting in our Sacramento driveway. The car looked pathetic next to his shiny BMW, all faded blue paint and chrome that had seen better decades, but it was mine now. Let me back up. Grandma Rose had just passed away at 92, and the family gathered for the reading of her will. Jessica and I were her only grandchildren, but we couldn't have been more different. Jessica was the golden child, married to a successful lawyer, living in their perfect suburban mansion, always dressed like she stepped out of a magazine. Me? I worked part-time at a local bookstore, wore thrift shop clothes, and apparently married the wrong man. When the lawyer read that Jessica inherited the Malibu beach house worth over $1 million, she squealed with delight. Then came my inheritance. Grandma's old car and personal effects stored in the attic. Brad's jaw dropped open. Personal effects? Brad had shouted right there in the lawyer's office. What kind of joke is this? Jessica gets prime real estate and Katie gets garage sale leftovers. The lawyer, a dignified man in his 60s, had looked uncomfortable, but explained that these were Grandma Rose's explicit wishes. Jessica tried to look sympathetic, but I caught her smirking behind her designer purse. I'm sure there are some lovely family photos and maybe some antique furniture, she said in that condescending tone she'd perfected since childhood. Brad was furious the entire drive home, ranting about how my family had always treated me like the poor relation. Maybe he had a point. That afternoon, when the estate handlers delivered Grandma's car and 3 boxes of her belongings, Brad completely lost it. He rifled through the boxes like a madman, old photo albums, her jewelry box with costume pieces, some vintage clothing, and stacks of what looked like old documents and letters. "This is garbage," he screamed, throwing a pearl necklace back into the box. "Fake pearls and moth-eaten dresses. Your grandmother was senile, she obviously mixed up the inheritance." I tried to calm him down, but Brad was beyond reason. He'd been counting on that beach house money to pay off his financial debts, though I didn't know about those yet. "You know what, Katie? I'm done," Brad announced, pacing around our living room like a caged animal. "I married you thinking your family had money, but you're all just broke pretenders." His words hit like physical blows. We'd been married for 5 years, and I thought he loved me for who I was. Apparently, I was wrong. "Pack your stuff and get out. Take your precious inheritance and leave." I want a divorce. I stared at this man I'd shared a bed with, cooked dinner for, supported through his failed business ventures, and saw a stranger. "Brad, please, let's talk about this." But he was already on his phone, probably calling his lawyer or another one of his buddies. With nowhere else to go and only $300 in my personal account, I loaded Grandma's boxes into her old Buick. The car started on the 3rd try, engine coughing like an old man with a cold. Brad stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with disgust. "Don't come crawling back when you realize what you've lost," he called out. I couldn't respond without breaking down completely. As I drove away from the only home I'd known as an adult, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the rearview mirror. 32 years old, homeless, and apparently worthless in everyone's eyes. The old Buick wheezed down the street, carrying me toward an uncertain future. I drove aimlessly for hours, finally stopping at a rest area outside Bakersfield as the sun began setting. Sitting in that parking lot, surrounded by truckers and travelers with actual destinations, I felt completely lost. That's when I decided to really look through Grandma's things, not frantically like Brad had, but carefully, lovingly. The first box contained family photos spanning decades, including pictures of Grandma as a young woman that took my breath away. She'd been stunning, posed next to expensive cars and wearing elegant gowns. The second box held her jewelry, and as I examined the pieces more closely under the overhead light, something seemed off. These costume pieces felt heavier than they should. The pearl necklace Brad had dismissed so carelessly caught my attention. The pearls had an unusual luster, and the clasp was marked with tiny letters I couldn't quite make out. I held it up to the light, and something told me these weren't fake. The ruby ring, the diamond earrings, the emerald bracelet, they all had that same substantial feel. My heart started racing as I remembered stories Grandma used to tell about her younger days, traveling to Europe, meeting interesting people. I'd always thought they were just stories. The third box contained documents, deeds, certificates, and legal papers that made no sense to me, but there was something else, a small brass key taped to the bottom. The key was old-fashioned, ornate, with a number engraved on it, 347. Below it, in Grandma's spidery handwriting, was an address in downtown Sacramento, and the words, "When you're ready, sweetheart." My hands were shaking as I realized this was meant specifically for me. Grandma had planned this, known exactly what would happen. The next morning, I drove to the address, a prestigious bank in the financial district. The safety deposit box supervisor, a kind woman named Mrs. Prestert Chen, led me to box 347. "Your grandmother paid the fees in advance for 50 years. She explained. "She said her granddaughter would come when the time was right." The key turned smoothly, and what I found inside changed everything. The safety deposit box contained documents that made my head spin. Stock certificates for companies I'd heard of, Apple, Microsoft, Google, all purchased decades ago when they were practically worthless. Real estate deeds for properties in 3 states. Bank account information showing 7-figure balances. And a letter, written in Grandma's careful script, "My dearest Katie, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered who you really are. I always knew you had the strength to stand on your own. The jewelry is real, I've had it appraised. The stocks are worth more than that beach house Jessica inherited. But most importantly, you now know that your worth isn't determined by others." I sat there crying, holding millions of dollars in assets. It took 6 months to liquidate some of the assets and establish my new life. I bought a beautiful apartment in San Francisco, started my own consulting business, and began learning about investments. The transformation wasn't just financial. I hired a personal trainer, updated my wardrobe, and discovered confidence I never knew I had. The costume jewelry alone was worth over $200,000. Grandma had been collecting valuable pieces for decades, hiding her wealth behind a facade of simple living. I kept her car, though, had it fully restored to mint condition. It became my reminder of how wrong people can be when they judge by appearances. I also kept her secret. As far as my family knew, I was scraping by. 1 year later, I was leaving a high-end restaurant in downtown Sacramento when I heard a familiar voice. Katie, is that you?" I turned to see Brad, but he looked terrible. Wrinkled clothes, unshaven, that desperate look of someone who'd hit rock bottom. He was with another woman, young, blonde, dripping with obviously fake jewelry. "Brad," I said calmly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. He looked me up and down, taking in my designer dress, expensive handbag, the confident way I carried myself. "You look different. Good. Really good." His companion tugged at his arm impatiently, but he ignored her. "How have you been? Where are you living now?" "I'm doing very well," I replied, not offering any details. Brad's eyes darted to the valet bringing my car around, not Grandma's restored Buick, which I kept at home, but a sleek Mercedes I'd bought with my first stock dividend. His face went white. "Listen, Katie, I've been thinking. Maybe we were too hasty with the divorce. I mean, we had good times, right? Maybe we could try again?" The desperation in his voice was pathetic. His blonde companion looked horrified. "Try again?" I almost laughed. "Brad, you threw me out because you thought I was worthless. You called me a loser. You said I should be grateful you ever married me. His face flushed red as his current girlfriend stared at him with new understanding. "That was a mistake," Brad stammered. "I was stressed about work, about money. I didn't mean those things." But I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was wondering how much I was worth now, trying to figure out his angle. "Actually, you did me a favor," I said, handing the valet a tip. "You showed me exactly who you were when things got tough. Some people rise to meet challenges, and others." I gestured vaguely at his disheveled appearance. "Well, others make excuses and blame everyone else for their problems." His girlfriend was backing away now, clearly realizing she'd hitched her wagon to the wrong horse. "Katie, please. I know I messed up, but we could make this work." "Brad," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "I need you to understand something. The woman who begged you not to leave, who cried in that driveway, she's gone. I'm not the same person who accepted being treated like a consolation prize." I opened my car door, then paused. "By the way, remember that junk Grandma left me? The costume jewelry you threw around like trash? I had it appraised. Just the pearl necklace alone was worth $50,000. The ruby ring? $80,000. Should I go on?" His mouth fell open. "The car you called a piece of junk? It's a classic now, worth more restored than your BMW ever was." His face cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally, defeated acceptance. "How?" he whispered. "How did you know?" I smiled, thinking of Grandma Rose and her lifetime of quiet wisdom. "I learned to look deeper than surface appearances. Something you never bothered to do with me." I got into my car, started the engine. "Oh, and Brad, that money problems you thought I didn't know about? The one that made you so desperate for Grandma's inheritance? You might want to get help with that before you drag someone else down with you." Through my rearview mirror, I watched him standing there as his girlfriend walked away, finally seeing him for what he really was. Just like I had learned to see myself for who I really was, not the woman he'd convinced me I was, but the strong, valuable person Grandma always knew I could become. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Jessica was remarrying. Apparently her first marriage hadn't worked out as perfectly as it seemed. The invitation was addressed to Katie and guest, and I smiled at the assumption that I'd need a +1 to feel complete. I RSVP'd for one and showed up in a stunning dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Jessica's new beach house was beautiful, but I wasn't impressed by what I once would have envied. After the ceremony, Jessica cornered me. "You look amazing, Katie. Really, I'm sorry things didn't work out with Brad." She paused, studying my face. "You seem different, happier." I hugged my sister, genuinely wishing her well. "I learned something important, Jess. Grandma didn't give us different inheritances. She gave us exactly what we needed." 2 years have passed since Jessica's wedding, and my life has settled into a rhythm I never imagined possible. I'm sitting in my San Francisco office, yes, my own office in a downtown high-rise, reviewing quarterly reports from my consulting firm. We now have 15 employees and clients across the West Coast. The business grew faster than I ever dreamed, but success feels different when you've earned it yourself rather than inherited it. My phone buzzes with a text from my assistant. "Your 3 p.m. is here, the family from Sacramento." I smile, knowing exactly who that means. The Hendersons, a young couple facing the same kind of medical bills that once seemed impossible to me. Helping families navigate financial crises has become more than just business, it's my calling. When I see the desperation in their eyes, the same look I had sitting in that rest area parking lot, I remember why I do this. The Hendersons remind me of Brad and myself, except their love is real. Mike Henderson holds his wife's hand while she explains their situation, never once suggesting she's worthless or considering abandoning her. That's how I know they'll make it through this together. After they leave with a solid plan and genuine hope, I walk to my window overlooking the bay. Grandma Rosa's restored Buick sits in the parking garage below, still my daily reminder of how wrong first impressions can be. My phone rings, and Jessica's name appears on the screen. We talk regularly now. Our relationship has actually improved since I stopped feeling inferior to her. "Katie, I have some news." she says, and I can hear excitement in her voice. David and I are expecting. I'm genuinely happy for her. Her second marriage seems solid, built on actual compatibility rather than appearances. That's wonderful, Jess. When are you due? We chat about baby names and nursery colors, normal sister conversation that would have been impossible when I was drowning in self-doubt. Oh, and Katie? I saw Brad yesterday at the grocery store. He looked. She pauses, searching for words. He looked like he's been having a rough time. I'm not surprised about Brad's situation. Through mutual acquaintances, I'd heard his financial troubles had only gotten worse after our divorce. Apparently, his blonde companion hadn't stayed around long once she realized he was broke. He asked about you, Jessica continues. Wanted to know if you were still single, if you'd ever consider. I cut her off with a laugh. Jess, that ship sailed a long time ago. And it's true. I'm not bitter anymore, just grateful. Brad taught me an invaluable lesson about my own worth, even if he didn't mean to. Actually, there is someone I've been seeing. I tell her. His name is David Chen. He's a financial advisor. I don't mention that he's also incredibly kind, treats me like I matter, and has never once calculated my value in dollar signs. That evening, David and I are having dinner at our favorite quiet restaurant when my phone buzzes with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answer. Katie, it's Brad. His voice sounds rough, tired. David raises an eyebrow but continues eating, trusting me to handle whatever this is. I know I don't have the right to call, but I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not like that pathetic attempt outside the restaurant 2 years ago. I step outside to take the call, not wanting to subject David to this drama. I've been going to counseling. Brad continues, learning about my issues with money and control. I realize now how badly I treated you, especially when you needed support the most. I appreciate the apology, Brad, I say, and I mean it. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but holding on to anger was only hurting me. I hope you're getting the help you need. There's a long pause before he speaks again. I heard you're doing really well, your own company, success, everything. I'm proud of you, Katie. I know I have no right to be, but I am. His words surprise me with their sincerity. Thank you. I reply simply, take care of yourself, Brad. After I hang up, David appears beside me. Everything okay? He asks, his hand warm on my shoulder. Everything's perfect, I tell him, and for the first time in my life, I actually mean it. 6 months later, I'm cleaning out Grandma Rose's old house, which I recently bought back from the estate. In the attic, I find one more box I'd missed years ago. Inside are letters, dozens of them, written to me but never sent. Each one chronicles a different piece of advice, a different life lesson Grandma wanted to share. The last letter, dated just weeks before she died, contains one final surprise. Katie, if you're reading this, it means you've found your strength. The car was never about the money, it was about teaching you that real value can't be seen on the surface. You were always my treasure, sweetheart. Now you know it too. I sit there crying, not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude for a grandmother who saw my potential when I couldn't see it myself.